fantastic. So obviously an extremely seasoned career, if you don't mind me saying. That's you've done it all in hospitality by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a proper job. That's probably the GM isn't just looking after the welfare of guests and the comfort of the guests. I've spent more time since COVID looking after the needs of staff than I have guests.
Giving yourself every opportunity to claim bookings through those channels is essential, really, because obviously we know how expensive those commissionable bookings can be. They soon add up.
Don't just slash the rate on a Monday and a Sunday for the sake of it, because you feel that's what we've always done. That's the one thing I really struggle to when you go in to make changes or you tweak things is, oh, but we've always done it that way. Well,
Okay, a very warm welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining me. I've got Mark Yates here with me. Mark is a very seasoned general manager. Mark and I have known each other for some years, and we've a whole load of questions to ask you today, Mark, around direct bookings, about the hotel industry. So a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
So, Mark, maybe as a starting point, could you tell us a little bit about your experience in hotels?
Yeah, of course. Very much a classic country house hotel upbringing, from graduating from college or university, as we call it now, in the mid to late 80s. Was very fortunate to be selected for a Relais Châteaux training scheme, which I sort of self-managed long before the current sort of 10 out of 10 that Relais Châteaux do operate. Very lucky to be mentored by a very seasoned hotelier, country house hotelier, who took it on, who at the time owned the Bath Priory, obviously in Bath. Gentleman by the name of John Donnithorne, who sadly is obviously no longer with us, but he very much fashioned my early career when I was in my late teens, and took me under his wing at the Bath Priory, sent me to France to 2 separate locations, including a 2-star Michelin restaurant just south of the Dordogne. He then introduced me to Tim Hart at Hambleton Hall, and then latterly, many years later, introduced me to Peter Herbert, and I had the pleasure of, in my mid-20s, of being his hotel manager, a role that I fulfilled, and then became general manager for 7 years. So that was really the platform of my career. In between the Relais and Châteaux training, I was very grateful for a front office role at the Savoy, and there for the centenary year in 1989, which was a sort of memorable experience, and working under Willie Bower, who became a close confidant and friend. And thereafter that, as a repeat, I joined Gravetie, became the platform of my management career. And he very much taught me what a P&L was about. I shared an office with him for 7 years, and all the good things and the bad things. And to this day, I still I browse through every hotel FC's P&L that is presented to me on a monthly basis, or a quarterly, or a bi-monthly, because I like to look at it sort of halfway through the month as well, where we're trading. So yeah, very much that. And after 7 years, I was in my early 30s by then. I felt that as much as it was an iconic country house hotel, as it still is, I was slightly in an ivory tower. So I returned to London, managed a private members club in the city, which was part of the Brocket Hall, CCA International. Mm-hmm. Then I missed the day-to-day dramas of hotels. Running a club was slightly different and a novelty at the time. Mm-hmm. Working Monday to Friday, which was bizarre, but in those days. Spells a couple of years at Ashdown Park, which is very close to where my home is. A couple of years there, then went off and worked and reopened a hotel in Rhode Island for an English-based management company, but were US committed in Newport, Rhode Island, Vanderbilt Hall, which and thereafter that I sort of was with the management company, did a very short stint back in Sussex, and went to open. Whilst my American experience introduced me to a number of people, I joined the Greens Group, which was the founding company of Queenwood Private Members Golf Club in Surrey, Ottershaw, which was a very demanding 2 years of opening from a farm and a field to obviously a new iconic golf course, as it still is 22 years later, but building a clubhouse from scratch. We literally and it remains a very exclusive and private members club, to the extent I've only ever played on the course 3 times, but it's, you know. I then was fortunate. I sort of took some time out after that, not you know, just because there was a possibility of doing something else with Fred Green. He was looking at another property, but I then by accident fell into running my own hospitality management company. I hot desked with a friend who had an outside catering stroke recruitment company. At the time, in the sort of 2003-4, there weren't many people who'd come from my experience and went into sort of basically hospitality management, which included the core business, which was the bread and butter, was recruitment. And you know, I was holding the fort in a friend's office one day because for his outside catering company, and then people were phoning me up or him to see if they needed a restaurant manager, hotel manager, or head chef, and that's how it all started. I just used my network of the previous 15 years to do that. I ended up doing that for best part of 8 years. We were in different guises. I bought somebody out, I bought somebody in, and in that time we took on a couple of management contracts of 2 public houses in the Surrey and Sussex, of which I still have an association at a distance from today, and also helped a very able investor, a builder investor, reopen a hotel in Kent, which was obviously my role was to recruit, staff it, fully compliance, and food and beverage. Primarily put together a wine list, which is what you do as a young country house hotelier. It's sort of part and parcel of nuts and bolts of what you do. I never intended to leave the sort of day-to-day hotel operations that I did. I was in my mid-40s, and I was very lucky enough to be asked to join Patrick Burke at the Atlantic Hotel in Jersey for 3 years, which was obviously an opportunity to live on the island, which to this day remains sort of very close to my heart, and we return regularly and keep in touch with the island friends and colleagues. I used to holiday there, take long weekends before I went to Jersey, so it wasn't sort of too out of a strange effect. And living in Jersey is just like living on the mainland, but a little bit, with great privacy as well. So it's so yeah, followed that with stints in the New Forest, brief spell with Harbour Hotels, Park House, which was a very underperforming hotel when I joined them. Again, an overseas owner, but was English, whose grandparents actually owned the hotel, as many of you will know, as a boarding house, which sits between the Cowdray estate and Goodwood, but now is a Pride of Britain member, 24-bedroomed sporting estate with a luxury spa, which we had to turn around. Really, it was underperforming.
Sorry to interrupt, and I think that where we first met when you were.
It was. We met in London at Rubens the first time, and you did a presentation for Best Loved. That's right. And I didn't want to mention you actually, Adam, and we're obviously pausing this probably, but I didn't want to say that's when we properly first met, and I know you and your wife joined us. You came and stay many years ago. Yeah. So no, a real pleasure, and that we're having my daughter's wedding there next year. So yeah, at Park House. Yeah, so yeah, it's one of the other things that has kept me really busy. Having said I wouldn't interfere, with the wedding, but obviously, having arranged the venue and the date with my old operations manager. But I've been up and down there a couple of times recently, and I'm still a bit of a sounding board for Jeremy and Seamus, who's the actual owner. But sorry, we've diverted.
No, not at all.
So obviously, COVID changed. I was doing a marvelous project pre-COVID this time 4 years ago, up in Leicester, at the Belmont Hotel, which had previously come into new ownership. Overseas investment was prominent, and I was sort of 9 months into that project, and then we all know what happened on the 23rd of March 2020, sadly. What was something that I would have really would have enjoyed was curtailed, and then majority of that year and the beginning of the following year was looking after empty hotels, and so since then had a stint last year over at Broome Park in Canterbury, again assisting an overseas owner within a management company of a refurbishment of Lord Kitchener's Mansion House. Since then, I took some time out the latter part of last year for sort of some personal commitments, and have gone back to assisting an old colleague that worked for me in his hospitality management company, and also helping a couple of people sell a pub and buy a pub. So before I move back into general management once again in the coming months.
Fantastic. So obviously an extremely seasoned career, if you don't mind me saying. That's you've done it all in hospitality by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a proper job. That's probably somebody once said it. Have you ever had a proper job? I was quite offended, actually. It was a guest at the Atlantic Hotel. He said, have you ever actually had a proper job? I said, and I didn't know what to say, actually. Quite upset me. And the industry now is so respected compared to it was when I joined in the 80s. It was, I think, people sort of did it because it was something they didn't know what else to do. But I always knew what I wanted to do. I remember going to see my sort of sixth form tutor, and I said, my father had. I've been very fortunate. My father travelled quite a bit with his business, and he took me to New York and other European destinations, and we stayed in some very nice hotels, and he did. That was how it all started. And London hotels were prominent in sort of family life, and clubland. He was a member of the RAC club. So I was just attracted to the comfort and the luxury of what all that offered, really.
So if I may then to touch on that, what do you think that today the hospitality industry needs to do to sort of attract but also retain its talent? Because there seems to be a common issue with attracting new people into our industry. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 4 to 5-star market has come out of COVID very well, because there was the initial bounce after COVID because of people having staycations and not traveling, some from choice and some because of restrictions. And I think that bounce, the sort of 4 red star plus sector have done well. And there's a number of small hotel family-owned groups that I'm associated with, and people will know who I'm talking about, that I've really made that employer experience so much greater. It isn't just about giving that experience to the guests now, it's looking after your staff. And I think that's where it's, but I think that's where the 3-star market and above, I know what the benefits that they are offering to their teams. And it's not just about pensions, but it's about the work-life balance. It's about what we do when they're in the workplace. We're not throwing money at them like drunken sailors, but I just feel it's really preserving them. Now you're never going to get everybody on side, but if you can look at your team members and your HODs in the eye, that we're doing the very best for them in the circumstances. It's a bit like justifying rising costs to guests, and frequently have this conversation when I was putting the pub I've recently been reopening, that we're charging what we can to support the business. So if you want to come here, you want to have heating, you want to have wood burners operating, you want to have a good food and beverage offering, but it comes at a price. I have nobody working within the operations that I've been associated with that doesn't earn anything less than about £12.50 an hour. And then you've got the gratuities on top of that, which goes through payroll, and that's all equally shared. And none of this sort of cash underneath the counter type thing have been shared out by the restaurant manager that might not be quite as fluid with his chef de rang or his head chef, or it's all we're becoming much more cleaner, I think, and I think that's and transparency. I think that is the best word. And that, to answer your question, I think that's how people are retaining staff, and I think that's really working. Really having HR departments and people development within that that are looking after the welfare of their staff. Forget, the GM isn't just looking after the welfare of guests and the comfort of the guests. I've spent more time since COVID looking after the needs of staff than I have guests. And I think that's really, really important.
I think it's something that you touched on there about work-life balance, which seems to be extremely topical at the moment. I think the experience that was shared with me across peers and clients across the industry was that lockdown and COVID sort of opened up this view of, people were furloughed. Well, I don't need to work 15-hour shifts. Maybe I'm going to go and do something else. And actually, it feels like a whole load of people left the industry, but then as a result, hospitality businesses are being a bit more innovative with their working conditions. So I know that the one hotel we work with has a 4-day-a-week policy for chefs. So all relatively long days, but much greater work-life balance. Everyone seems very happy, and as a result, their retention of kitchen staff is phenomenal. So I think it's really interesting, these new positive things that are coming off the back of it.
Yeah, and I've got another friend that runs a very successful private house, public house, pub. And he took a view after COVID to close on a Monday and a Tuesday, totally rigid. So he has one team effectively. It doesn't even open on a bank holiday Monday unless there's a private event. But I think in the first year, and I think he's been doing this for 4 years, obviously since we reopened, he saves in excess of £100,000 a year on a 1.2 million turnover. Those figures are probably a little bit stuck, but the heating and just the staffing costs. And I think that's just one small example that would never have happened if COVID hadn't happened.
No, really interesting. So let's talk about the challenges of the hotel industry, Mark. What do you see the biggest challenges to be at the moment?
I think I'd like to think we're through the worst of rising costs. Although once again, the living wage has returned and gone up again, and that's a huge increase. Over the last 4 years, I think that's a 30% increase on the minimum wage and the living wage, if I'm correct. And I think the rising costs. I think I touched upon it briefly a few moments ago. And making sure you've got the best people around you, whether it be external support. I'm talking obviously in finance. Are the right people in finance speaking to the right energy companies and making sure that they're getting the best possible deal over the period of time. I know a number of colleagues that went into a new deal a couple of years ago, and they went immediately for a 3-year deal, and sadly they're stuck paying the higher premium because they thought that's what was going to happen, and energy prices have come down. Food costs aren't going down, but more invigorated menus, better menu planning, smaller menus, not so much offering. I think that's really where it goes, dovetailing what you offer at room service menus with your bar menu. Keeping those, not have too many menus floating around. Concentrate on afternoon teas and the high end. More and more country house hotels, in particular, that I'm talking to at the moment. The lunch trade, unless it's a snack, a sandwich on arrival, or a sandwich over lunch meeting, and a coffee. The formal lunches within the countryside are not what they were 20 years ago. I'm not saying your Michelin-starred Relais Châteaux hotels aren't doing that. Of course they are, because they're venues that are destinations, restaurants with rooms that we can roll off, and which I've been fortunate enough to work in and manage. But I just think making things less complicated, less wastage, and I think chefs are much more accountable. The modern day chef is much more accountable than they were. The tools that you get through the revenue streams, the daily reports, the backup you get from back office reports, whichever system you're working with, you can share with your head chef, which you couldn't do so easily 25 plus years ago. It was much harder to explain to a chef where everything was going or not going. Now I get chefs demanding, when they see the daily revenue of food from the previous day, they come demanding to find out why it wasn't more, and they all forget about the dear old VAT and things like that. That's probably, been taken off. Well, of course, it's been taken off before it goes through the overnight system. But it's really nice and rewarding that they're comfortable with things such as Procure Wizard and things that they wouldn't have been before. So I think that's really, they're good cost saving measures. So I think the modern day chef is, I'm not suggesting that older chefs out there haven't adapted. I'm one of those general managers that had to adapt, because when I started out, we barely had a computer in the offices. Certainly we were relied on fax and teletext, but for ordering, not quite. I can just about remember that, but you certainly weren't. Email was not, and that's revolutionised. The sort of the movement. I also think that it's become a bit impersonal. I think you're sitting in an average sized hotel, and you're sort of with 5 or 6 HODs all under the same umbrella, but you're all sending each other emails all the time. Yes, to follow up a meeting, but sometimes I think you're almost sending each other emails across desks. I think it's I still struggle with that, although I have you have to work alongside that. But the challenges are always going to be costs. But going back to about the high end, 4 plus 5 star, the client is accepting, the guest is accepting the premium rates. If you want to go, they have a choice. They don't have to stay in the most luxurious hotels. They can go and stay elsewhere, and then probably not be so comfortable, and perhaps not choose that route next time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let me change the conversation slightly. Let's talk about OTAs. And it seems that there is a more than ever to draw a sort of a broad brush approach, an over reliance on third parties. There's lots of businesses, there's lots of hotels out there that seem to be really cracking this and starting to reduce their reliance on OTAs. But I'm really interested to sort of probe into your experience, Mark, and understand what have you found to work to reduce over reliance on these third parties.
I mean, so I'm not stumbling for the answer. I'm just thinking how the best way to put it. Third party is very useful when you've got some distressed stock at a certain time of the year. It's when you have a high season and you're going to be achieving that rate, and there's a revenue management company behind you that's trying to fill. and reduce the rate to get, because they will think then oh, that will increase food and beverage and obviously the bar spend, but it doesn't always work that way, because then it puts pressure on the operational side, but you're not getting you get your room rates probably been slashed by 30 £30 in 100, almost. And I think that's where so I think working with your own website tools is really, and allowing people to have, and I've seen it quite a lot frequently. Our websites now are much more customer friendly than they were. If they're a bit clunky, then the guest is going to go to third parties, OTAs, because it's easier, and we must be less rigid on cancellations and no shows and things, because they have those facilities with Booking.com and TripAdvisor, such like, because they know they can cancel within their time frame. So, and I think pre-arrival purchasing is really important, and that's quite lucrative as well. It's lucrative to the client as well. The guest. So I'm not saying I'd never use. Of course, I'd never use third parties again. I think it just needs within the general manager's senior team, i.e., front office and revenue manager, revenue director, whoever, depending on the size of the property, there needs to be a strategy and to be stuck to, and encourage your front desk's operating staff to make sure that they are, making sure the phone's answered is one of them. That's my bug. The days of not having a reception person on certain times of the day, but a duty manager will take the phone. It's killing the business. It's killing the business, because then people will. The phone doesn't get answered. People will just go to the third party sites if their website isn't supporting. So it's a three-way thing, really.
Yeah, I think there's obviously so much emphasis placed on driving bookings through one's own website, but actually, perhaps the overlooked area. There's only technically three ways of having bookings direct. If they walk in and book a room, which happens obviously in some seaside towns, but perhaps certainly less so for country house hotels, through the telephone and through the website. So giving yourself every opportunity to claim bookings through those channels is essential, really, because obviously we know how expensive those commissionable bookings can be. They soon add up.
Yeah, no, I think it's just it's just good housekeeping from base, i.e., within your hotel, within your office, to make sure you've got the right people and the right tools that they feel comfortable. If you do away with receptionists and reception front office team members, then everyone's just going to book online. But the amount of people that book online through a third party, then phone the hotel and then start chatting, happens all the. It's just, and of course, you then feel compelled to honour the third party rate, because you're not paying your 15 or 18 or your, some cases 22% at some stage if you're doing a deal. And offers floating around. That's why I always like my offices to be within earshot of the front desk, which it's not always, but because you can literally dive out. Someone wants to extend their stay and they come through TripAdvisor. Of course, you don't want them to go upstairs, which I've known, and it's happened. Normal staff think it's younger staff who haven't been perhaps guided and mentored and trained. Think it's almost acceptable they go upstairs to their iPad or their iPhone and just, we're just extending by the night, and
So you feel almost like there's an educational piece for staff to obviously inform them that of the improvement in profitability if bookings come through to you through direct means. But also I think there's probably maybe something the industry as a whole could be doing more to educate customers, because I suspect, certainly perhaps for the more mature clientele, they aren't necessarily aware of the sometimes extremely costly commission rate that these third parties charge.
Yeah, and I think that message you can get that message across to more mature senior guests within your website. The type of guest that you deal with and wants to stay in the sort of the high end quality accommodation and inventory understands, because they've had a career in something else themselves, and they're not stupid. You always get the odd one that's behaves as if they've never even been in a hotel in their lives, and this is of course, because it's always part of someone's makeup.
So let's talk about the guest experience. What do you think in 2024? What are guests looking for, irrespective of the type of hotel and the type of stay? What's the sort of, what are the key components?
Yeah, I mean, comfort. If accommodation wise, comfort. It sounds bizarre, but a comfortable bed, a hot shower, and a room that's got all the right TV and connect to their own iPads, and they can drive through that. So an update. What I'm trying to say is an updated television stroke audio experience. I think that's the sort of three main: hot water, comfortable bed, and audio experience. Yeah, no one likes shabby furnishings, but you're accepting that there's going to be a bit of worn carpet. You can't change carpets in corridors and bedrooms every other year as much as you'd like to. It's a bit like you don't do it in your own home, do you? But I think it's just I think standard of housekeeping. I mean, I think as an active general manager, I love being in and around my accommodation, because it's where my profit is. It's the understanding of what we offer within the hospitality trays, and making those comfortable. I think that's really and understanding then their needs, really. I think that's and do what you say. Do what you say within your website and with your marketing of the stay and the package. Be consistent. Don't promise something you can't deliver. I think a lot of people have learned that. That came out of COVID as well. Post-COVID, that people started. People are looking for a bit more. But I would say, put more added extras in the high end accommodation rates. Put some extras in the rooms. Make sure the toiletries are of reasonable quality and not seen to be too mean, because you can push a rate £5, £10, and a reasonable coffee machine, even just so people know that they've got things at their fingertips, and suddenly you've put £10 on the room rate without realizing. Well, you certainly realize, but because you've done it, but the guest experience is justified then. Yes.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. So when you start as a new general manager in a new hotel, what are the priorities for you? What do you look to sort of change and tweak?
Well, you don't. First of all, I never go in as a I never go in with a sort of really hard, firm approach. You sort of first few days you take it all in. You listen to all the trials and the tribulations of what's happened previously, and and sometimes you're not always walking into a car crash. Sometimes it was a car crash, which is why you're there. It's a bit like being a football manager. There's a reason why there's a management change, but I think but you assess the business. You assess where it is. If it's a distressed time of year, if it's a November or a February time of year, you're coming out of a difficult period. You've got to understand the difficulties and not be too, blunt and strong, because they've probably been through quite a tricky time. So you've got to be sympathetic within reason. But you get all your senior team together, you share time with them very quickly, and you assess what's the business on the books coming forward, because your next quarter is where you'll be judged within your first quarter. So you see what needs to be done there. But I also look at the quality of of what's happening on the ground floor. You know, what's happening in the restaurant, what's happening in the bar, the bar offerings. You know, I touched upon it earlier, making sure. You know, I won't name the hotel obviously, but there was a hotel that was only making 50% on beverage sales because they were reluctant post COVID to put their prices up. When you know, absolutely, you know. And it causes a real conflict with your regular clients, your golf club members potentially, because suddenly you're going from, you know, giving them a pint for under a fiver, and suddenly, you know, it's going to £6, you know, because that's what it costs. Yeah. So you know that's really where you go and make sure that the food and beverage GPs are being achieved within reason, or if not, there's a good reason. So. And you check your average room rate. You know, why is the midweek room rate, the 4 days of the midweek room rates, you know, so much less than the 3 days that you aspire to at weekends? You know, that there needs to be a little bit more cohesion to that. Just because there's a reason why someone needs to stay somewhere on a Sunday night. So why slash the room rate by 40% just because they didn't stay Saturday night? You know, I know, of course, we're naive to say that. You know, premium nights aren't just Saturday, but you know, don't just slash the rate on a Monday and a Sunday for the sake of it, because you feel that's what we've always done. You know, that's the one thing I really struggle to when you go in to make changes or you tweak things is, oh, but we've always done it that way. Well, you know, that's maybe why I'm here. You know, so, you know, but no, it's just it's understanding, and I love going in to assess my team, and you know, recruitment's really important to me. You know, and I've done quite a bit of it with teams, and the best pleasure I get is when you've got square pegs in round holes, and you bring those people together and play to their strengths, and suddenly their weaknesses become, you know, quite diluted, because you're keeping, you know, and that builds their confidence, you know, and that's what it's all about, you know, being confident about your own ability, whether you're working within a team. And you're a junior member of staff or just a member of staff that chooses to have a steady Eddie type role and never has an ambition of going any further. We've all worked with people like that, and I think they become your most valuable footman.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so final question then, just to do with marketing. Obviously, an area that I'm very passionate about. As a general manager, what do you feel are the sort of the must-have areas of marketing for promoting the business and driving bookings?
I think it's a daily. I think it's, you know, with social media as it is now, and we're all on, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or whatever, Twitter, X. It's when you get those daily updates and they're interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's one particular Park House, for example. They won't mind me saying this because I was there recently and we were chatting about it. I suddenly said to Stuart, my old ops manager, and I said, what's happened to Instagram? You suddenly, and there was an Instagram provider in the village that moved to the village, wanted to join the spa, and a deal was done, and she now posts on a daily basis. But it's interesting content. You know, Park House was always quite reserved, so I think it's giving content and detail of interest is what Eden hotels are very good at it as well. I touched upon Iconic as well, but I'm not quite. And you can always tell when the MD or the GM is proactive, and you know, whether he's on you might know him personally, so I might be on a social media site with him or her personally, and then suddenly they're rubber stamping that within their particular hotel. So yeah, no, I think that's what I want from marketing. Yeah. And bring it through, but also then when there is a major story, make sure that's on your website, as it's not just then forgotten about. There's a major event that happens at a certain time of year around a social event, that it then stays on your website for you to reference, because it helps your own marketing department as well, or your sales management team.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's finish off with some quick fire questions, Mark. So first one I have for you is, what would you say are the top 3 metrics you look at either weekly or even daily as a general manager
Previous day's revenue, daily forecast, what's happening, where we can sell, what we're offering in the restaurant, whether it be specials, and more importantly, the quality of what's going on within housekeeping. Keeping an eye on making sure the laundry company, which is probably external, that they aren't slipping through some dodgy, dirty sheets that have been washed.
Okay. So second question then is, if you could magically increase either rate, occupancy, or direct bookings by 100%, which of those metrics would you choose?
Rate.
Okay. And finally, what is the most important thing in your view about being a successful general manager, Mark?
Being consistent, measured, being seen as the figurehead, taking responsibility, but also encouraging those around you. I don't say below, around you, because we're all equal. There always has to be a leader. There has to be a captain, and yeah. But you have to listen to other people's views as well. And I think that's really I like to take that on board. It doesn't mean to say I'll go along with it, or I'll be, the power of other people's influences. But you can, sometimes you might make a decision, and then somebody else comes to you and with a different perspective, and you have to climb down sometimes and say, no, I'm not right. You're right on this occasion. You're right. I do agree. Now I've taken time to reflect. I'm now responding in a different way. I think you can change your mind. I think that's right. But if you do change your mind, you need to acknowledge the other person, that they had the better idea, or they came up with the idea. Don't take it all as you should all sort of stand together on that.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, this has been a really insightful conversation. It's always great to speak with you. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, good. We'll speak soon. Yeah.
That sounds good. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.